seated. Good afternoon, and from here on out, you're going to be referred to as Juror E40. And the purpose of the questioning today is to go over the juror questionnaire that you filled out Monday. Okay, Mr. De La Ronda is going to start. You may proceed.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hello.
From reading your questionnaire here, you basically were living in Iowa at the time that this happened back in February of last year. Did I have that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how long have you been living here in Seminole County? How long after? When did you move to Seminole County is what I'm trying to ask you.
I moved to Seminole County in November of last year.
And you mentioned in your questionnaire that you have heard about the case and based on national news?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall, was it like NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox News, CNN, or?
Probably NBC.
Okay. And would it have been a very just basic, something happened in Sanford, or what do you recall at the time you first heard it, what you heard about the case?
I don't recall. I just recall that we were told that, that an incident was reported in Florida. That's what I remember. It was not
No specific
major,
about facts or anything like that?
No.
And since you were living in Iowa at the time, did you pay attention to the case at all after that?
No.
Okay. So you moved down here, you said, I think in November?
Yes.
Okay. Once you moved here in November, did you start paying attention to the case at all?
There have been reports on TV, but I didn't go out of my way to seek additional information.
Okay. And when you say reports on TV, would that have been on local TV or would that still have been national news?
Local.
Okay. All right. Do you recall local TV, what particular channel you watched?
2, I believe.
Okay. I think we've covered the aspect of the TV aspect of it. Did you do any media search, or let me rephrase the question. Do you on a regular basis get on the internet, on Facebook or other aspects of our social media that we have?
I don't have a Facebook account,
Okay.
no.
Do you do any research on Google, or just you get your news by the internet is what I'm trying to ask either?
Very little.
Okay.
Very little.
Do you recall anything in particular on the internet that you may have stumbled upon regarding this case?
No.
Okay. Do you get the newspaper since you've moved here to Seminole County?
I get the Sunday newspaper.
Okay, and that would be the Orlando Sentinel?
In there, yes.
Okay. Do you recall reading about this case in any Sunday newspaper?
I believe there was some articles in the last 2 or last Sunday.
Last Sunday specifically?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what, if anything, do you recall reading about the case last Sunday?
I remember there was a lot of information about logistics.
Okay.
How many tickets would be released and where people should park and
That,
media information.
anything about the facts of the case?
No.
Okay. All right. At some point, you got the jury summons to come here.
Yes.
Correct? After receiving that, did you pay more attention to the news? I believe you got that about 3 or 4 weeks ago, the summons? Or?
At least 3 or 4 weeks ago, yes.
Did you start paying closer attention knowing that you potentially could be a juror in at least one case here in Seminole County?
I believe it was on the news. There was a reporter that said if your summons said June 10th, it's likely.
Okay.
And that was really the only connection I made.
Okay. As a result of that, did you then do any research about the case itself?
No.
Okay. And was that on purpose, or you just weren't interested in it?
I'm just too busy at work. I just
Okay.
didn't have time.
Okay. And so all you really remember is it was an incident involving the persons mentioned, Mr. Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin, and one of the individuals is deceased.
Yes.
I think is what you wrote. That's,
right.
Is that all you really remember about the case?
I remember something about in Florida. I remember a gated community stated, and I know somebody was a teenager.
Okay. Anything else?
That's about it.
Okay. You know, as we go through life, sometimes we remember things later that we didn't remember at the time as of yesterday or today, and you know, they pop in our minds. And
Sure.
so the question is, you're a juror, you're listening to the evidence, you're hearing certain evidence, and then all of a sudden you go, oh, well, hold on, I do remember watching the news or reading something in the paper, and it may have been a little bit different the way the media reported it. The question is, if that were to occur, Do you think you could set that aside? Do you understand the law requires you to set aside and only rely in making your decision on your, obviously, your God-given common sense, but also the facts that come out in the courtroom?
Yes.
You think you can do that?
Yes.
Okay. So you don't have any question about if something popped in your mind about the case just from the media?
No.
Okay. Do you always believe what's in the media in
No.
terms of what they tell?
No, I do not.
Okay. And you're not the first person to say that, so don't feel bad. And what, you just have you understand that they have, do you feel they have opinions when they write the articles, or you don't think they get everything, or what's your basis for not?
I would say a combination of all of the above, the information they may have at the time, what they place importance on, the way they might report something, or just their take on what the different types of people they may have interviewed as opposed to others.
So you're not getting a complete story, I guess, for lack of a better word. It may not be accurate.
Probably would be accurate, yes.
Okay. And I apologize if I already asked you this. Once you found out you were coming down here and you knew it potentially was about this case, did you do any research since last Sunday, I guess?
I did not.
You didn't have much time. But...
I did not.
Okay. Anything else that comes to mind now since you wrote this Monday morning, and you followed the judge's admonitions not to talk to anybody either at home or obviously that you've been waiting here in the courthouse, but I'm talking about maybe you've had a little bit more time to think about it. Was there anything else you can remember that you said, oh, I wish I wouldn't have written down, I do remember this other aspect of it?
No.
Okay. How about with families? Have you had any discussions about the case prior to coming to court when the court Judge Nelson told you can't talk about the case? What I'm getting at is the time you got the summons, the time you came to court, did you have any discussions with family or friends about like, oh, I potentially might be a juror, in the Zimmerman case or anything like that?
Not really. No, I remember saying I'm summoned to jury on June 10th. There are maybe several cases going on in Florida. I don't know. I've never been summoned here before. I don't know the protocol or procedures, so I didn't really draw conclusions.
As far as you can remember, nobody gave you their opinions about the case at family or friends, or did they?
They did not.
No. How about back in Iowa when you first heard about it? I'm going back now. Back in 2012, February 2012, when you first heard about the case, did anybody there, family or friends, give you, or co-workers, et cetera, give you their opinions about the case?
No.
So I gather you had no first impressions and you have no lasting impressions about the case, and that's why you were able to put that you have no opinion and you can keep an open mind. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. May I have a moment, Ron?
Yes, it is.
I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Meara, sorry.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Hello.
How are you?
Fine, how are you?
Good. The afternoon wears on. We tend to slow down a little bit, so I'm going to try and talk it up and talk a little bit louder. No, you're fine. You can relax. I'm just trying to keep myself going. The main reason why this part of it happens is to make sure that whatever you heard about the case, you leave outside the doors when you come in. So if you said yes to that question, we could stop right now and answer it. The problem, as Mr. DeLeon mentioned, is we want to drill in a little bit just to make sure that what you may have heard doesn't show back up later, and then you have to deal with it. And it's easy to deal with it, but I want to talk to you about that.
Sure.
If you do remember something that we haven't talked about here today, the judge is going to tell you, going to instruct you that the way we handle criminal cases, all cases, is that you have to listen to what the witnesses have to say, look at the evidence, and decide only and solely on that evidence. Does that make sense?
Yes.
The judge would tell you to do that. Would you be able to agree and accomplish that?
Yes.
Okay. Corollary to that is, of course, if you hear anything outside, whether you happen to look down and see a newspaper on the floor as a juror and see a headline, you have to convince yourself to ignore that. And if you saw a headline a month ago, you have to make sure that it doesn't creep back into your process. Can you commit to that as well?
I could.
Sometimes other jurors will do the same things that we're worried about, that you get picked, you're on the jury, you're now back deliberating, the case is over. State's been on their case, we've heard jury instructions from the court, and now it's your turn to decide on a verdict. And some other juror says, you know, I never heard about this fact. And I remember reading about it. I remember my aunt told me about it, or whatever. how would you handle that juror who tried to bring in something that wasn't talked about from the jury, from the witness box?
I think you need to steer that person to remember that they need to pay attention to the information that was delivered in the setting of the courtroom, and perhaps ask for transcripts if that's a possibility, sort of bring people back to what the information was that was delivered in the setting in which you need to make your decisions based on.
And you can take that on as a juror to make sure that not only yourself, but all the other jurors individually, and the jury as a whole, applies the law as the judge suggests, or the judge orders, instructs you to do.
Sure, absolutely.
You had mentioned a moment ago as one of the reasons why you didn't run out and look at more information about this case was that you're too busy at work.
Yes.
Was your job that brought you down here from Iowa?
I took a position here, and that's
Okay.
why I moved.
Okay,
Yes.
sounds good. So it's a new position here,
Yes,
6 to 7 months old, I guess?
yes,
Okay.
6 months.
There is a chance, as you may have read in the jury questionnaire, that this case could last 4 to 6 weeks. That fact alone, would that cause you problems? Obviously, it's problematic to leave a job for 4 or 6 weeks, but would that cause you any specific problems that we would need to discuss amongst us in the court if you were asked to serve as a juror in this case?
I don't believe so.
There's also a chance, though it's not been decided yet, that because of some of exactly what we're talking to you about here, the publicity of the case, that the jury may be sequestered. And what that means is that you don't go home at night to try and save inviolate everything that you hear. Because obviously, if you promise to listen to just what's here in the courtroom, we send you home and you get blared on by the media, that impact could really have a negative impact on the case. So the judge may decide that you'll spend time with us not only during the day but at night. Would that in and of itself then cause a problem that you could not get around?
No.
Okay, so you could serve for 6 weeks if it takes that long, and even if you were sequestered.
Yes.
Have you gotten a feel for the local media here yet in the 7 or 8 months you've been here?
Not really. I don't watch much news.
Okay. And do you have cable?
I do.
What
Dish
is it?
Network?
Satellite?
Satellite, yes.
Okay, so you get the national stations if you want,
Yes,
and you also, I think, have access to the locals as well.
yes.
Any particular ones that you do watch? I think you said Channel 2 is
Channel 2,
becoming your default?
yes.
Okay. If I were to throw out some of the names of the major stations like CNN and Fox and ABC, NBC, CBS, out of those 5, which one would you default to?
NBC.
And why is that?
I'm just accustomed to it.
Okay,
I enjoyed watching Peter Jennings. That was his news, so I stayed with that station.
okay. There are some stations that are known for being of a certain political bent. Do you consider yourself likening one of or any of those stations because of a certain political view or slant on the news?
No.
And if I were to ask you, based upon your limited exposure to the case, the one most significant fact that you remember, is the one thing that sort of distills out your perspective on this case in 1 or 2 or 3 sentences, what would it be?
I recall the phrase gated community. I recall the phrase teenager. And that's about it. And some struggle. That's about what I remember.
Anything else?
No.
And you said, should something else come up, you'll make sure that you don't let it come into your process. Should be chosen as a juror, and also you would not allow other jurors to do it, correct?
Correct.
And I have no further questions. Appreciate the time. Thank you.
And if you'll just remain seated for a moment, and counsel, when you're ready, please approach the bench.